Most people don't fail because they're not smart enough or strong enough or talented enough. They fail because they're not disciplined. If the person who says, I'll start tomorrow, doesn't realize tomorrow turns into next week, and next week into next year, and before long they've spent a decade explaining why they never move. A weak mindset will always find a comfortable excuse. It says things like, I deserve to rest before you've even earned the work. It whispers, this is just who I am, and convinces you that change is for others, not for you. But if you keep listening to those whispers, you'll wake up in the same place, mentally, financially, emotionally, as last year, and wonder why. Discipline, on the other hand, is a quiet force too, but one that builds. It doesn't ask how you feel, it asks who you want to become. It doesn't negotiate with comfort, it demands growth. It's the tool that shapes your life into something exceptional. Discipline is what takes your goals off the paper and puts them into your hands. It's not flashy, it's not fun, but it's effective. You see, success doesn't come to the one who waits for motivation. Success comes to the one who trains their mind for consistency. It's not about being perfect, it's about being committed. Every single day, doing what most won't, so you can live how most never will. It's the hard truth that most people don't want to hear, but it's the very truth that sets the winners apart from the rest. So today, we're not going to sugarcoat it. We're going to talk about why weak people stay broke. Not because they're cursed, but because they won't sacrifice weakness for strength, excuses for action, or comfort for commitment. And more importantly, we'll walk through how to rebuild a stronger, wealth-focused mindset through the power of daily discipline. But here's the flip side. Strength works the same way. Feed it, and it grows. You don't need to be born disciplined. You don't need a perfect past or some miracle breakthrough. What you need is to start feeding your mind with better thoughts, your time with better habits, and your life with better standards. I remember being broke and frustrated, sitting in my small apartment, looking at my empty bank account and asking, how did I get here? The answer was simple. I had been feeding the wrong things. Every excuse I made, every shortcut I took, every time I said, I'll do it tomorrow, that was a meal for my weakness. So I decided to starve it cold turkey. I stopped entertaining my excuses. I stopped letting my feelings dictate my schedule. I stopped justifying mediocrity because of my past or circumstances. And I started feeding my mind with books. I started listening to mentors who challenged me. I started planning my days, tracking my progress, setting goals that scared me a little and shaped me a lot. And you know what happened? My mindset changed. And when your mindset changes, your life follows. Let me give you a practical example. Say you want to become financially independent. That means learning about money, not just wishing for more of it. Most people stay broke because they feed their weakness with consumer habits instead of producer habits. They buy entertainment but won't invest in education. They spend on appearance but neglect their actual growth. You want to kill that weak mindset? Start saying no to things that steal your future and yes to things that build it. It's not always glamorous. In fact, it's boring sometimes. Waking up early to read, saying no to a night out so you can work on a business plan, refusing to complain and choosing to take action instead. But those little decisions, those are your meals. You're either feeding your potential or your excuses. And the stronger one wins. So here's the hard truth. Weakness doesn't die with a wish, it dies with work. And every time you choose purpose over pleasure, growth over comfort, you're starving that weakness. You're becoming the kind of person success respects. And that's the only way to win long term. One of the most powerful shifts you'll ever make in your life is trading that impulse to feel good right now for the discipline to feel proud later. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Being broke isn't always about income. A broke bank account usually starts with a broke mentality. And that mentality loves one thing above all, instant gratification. The desire to satisfy a feeling in the moment, even if it costs you your future. That's the trap. And it's silent, it doesn't scream, it whispers, just buy it, just skip it, just do it tomorrow. And every time you listen, you dig the hole a little deeper. Let's talk about money because it's the most obvious place this mindset shows up. You can always tell how someone thinks by how they spend. See, broke thinking is obsessed with how something feels right now. That new gadget, that designer outfit, that night out, those aren't bad in themselves, but when they take priority over saving, investing, learning, that's when the mindset becomes a trap. I've seen people with six-figure incomes live like they're poor, and people with modest earnings build wealth. Because the difference isn't the paycheck, it's the philosophy behind it. Wealthy thinking is long-term thinking. It asks, how will this decision serve me in 5 years? Not how does it make me feel for 5 minutes? Discipline in one area strengthens your capacity in every area. When you start to say, no, I don't need that sugar rush right now. No, I don't need to impress anyone with what I drive. Oh, I don't need to prove anything on social media. You start making room for what actually builds you. You start investing, and I don't just mean stocks and real estate. I mean in your mindset, your knowledge, and character. Those are the kinds of investments that pay forever. But let me tell you something. It's not easy at first. You will feel resistance. Your old self will beg for comfort. Your friends might not understand. That's okay, because you're not chasing quick wins. You're becoming someone who can sustain real ones. Wealth isn't just a goal. It's a byproduct of how you think, how you live, and how you manage your time and decisions. So if you want to kill the broke mindset, start with this. Stop asking what feels good now and start asking what gets me closer to the life I want later. Because the moment you stop making choices based on temporary emotion and start long-term vision, that's the moment your entire life trajectory changes. Let me tell you something that hit me hard early in life, and it changed everything. No one is coming to rescue you. I know it sounds a little harsh, but it's one of the most liberating truths you'll ever hear. The weak mindset waits. It waits for the right moment, the right person, the perfect conditions. It hopes someone will come along and offer a handout, open a door, or hand over a better future. But that kind of thinking doesn't produce progress. It produces stagnation. It's how people stay stuck for years, blaming and waiting and hoping instead of building and growing and doing. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand hardship. I understand disappointment. I know what it's like to look at your life and not like what you see. But if you look long enough and blame strong enough, you'll start believing that change is outside of you. And that's the danger. The moment you hand your power to someone else, even just mentally, you've lost. You've told yourself, I am not in charge of my own life. And from there, discipline dies, motivation dries up, and your dream becomes someone else's responsibility. But here's the good news. You can flip that switch at any time. You can decide, right now, it's on me. That's a powerful phrase. It's on me. My life, my choices, my future, it's on me. And once you say that, something changes inside. You start thinking differently. You start acting differently. You stop waiting and you start moving. When I was young, I used to complain. I'd say, if only I had better connections. If only I had more money. If only someone would just give me a chance. But one day I realized those if-onlys were keeping me broke. Not just financially, but mentally. I was outsourcing my potential to people who didn't even know my name. So I stopped. I stopped blaming, I stopped begging, and I started building. Little by little, I read the books. I showed up early. I stayed late. I listened to those who had walked the path before me and applied what they taught. And slowly, my life started to change. Not because the world changed, but because I did. You see, life doesn't respond to your complaints. It responds to your standards. The question is, what are you willing to tolerate? Are you okay living the same year over and over again, calling it a life? Or are you going to step up and say, no more. From now on, I take full ownership of everything I touch, because that's where growth begins. Not in wishing things were different, but in working to make them different. If you had a friend who spoke to you the way you speak to yourself, how long would you keep them around? Some of you are in a toxic relationship and it's with your own mind. I've met folks who will invest in every book, attend every seminar, and take every course, but they never stop to fix the one thing that truly shapes their future, their self-talk. You cannot speak failure all day and expect success to show up. That's not mindset. That's contradiction. See, weak people have a habit of narrating their past over and over again. They say things like, I've always been bad with money, or I just don't have the discipline, or success isn't for people like me. And they think they're being honest, but in reality, they're being hypnotized by their own language. Every time you repeat a limitation, you reinforce it. Every time you rehearse what went wrong, you're signing up to relive it. You don't speak success because you have it. You speak success so you can move toward it. That's what the wealthy understand. They don't spend all day reciting their failures. They use language that pulls them toward solutions. When they face a setback, they don't say, I blew it. They say, what can I learn from this? When things feel overwhelming, they don't say, I can't handle it. They say, I'll grow into the kind of person who can. I remember a time early in my journey when I felt way in over my head. I had debt, doubt, and a dozen reasons to quit. And let me tell you, the thoughts that ran through my mind weren't always noble. But I knew enough to know this. If I let those thoughts take the microphone, they'd run the show. So I started feeding my mind deliberately. I started writing down new phrases, simple affirmations. Things like, I am becoming more disciplined every day. Every setback is a setup for a comeback. And wealth is not a fantasy, it's a formula. And I said those out loud, not because I felt like it, but because I needed to create a new sound in my mind louder than the old noise. Your brain is always listening. Every word you speak becomes a blueprint your mind starts to follow. If you keep saying I'm stuck, don't be surprised when you feel paralyzed. If you keep saying nothing ever works out for me, don't expect momentum. But if you start saying I'm figuring it out, I'm learning the skills, and becoming the person success is drawn to, then you're building a mindset that aligns with your goals. Speak it before you see it. That's the formula. You plant the seed of belief with your words, then you water it with action. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be intentional. Train your inner dialogue like you'd train your body. Repetition, focus, and commitment. Because if you don't command your mind will command you. And that's how people stay stuck. But the moment you start speaking with purpose, something shifts. You start showing up differently, thinking differently, acting differently. You stop echoing the past and start narrating the future. And that's the beginning of transformation. So, if you want to rewrite your outer life, you must first rewrite your inner language. Speak like the person you intend to become, because that person is listening. Let me tell you something most people don't want to hear. Comfort is seductive, but it's not your friend. Comfort will lie to you. It will whisper in your ear, you deserve a break, long before you've earned anything. It will tell you, sleep a little longer, while your opportunities pack their bags and leave. Comfort is the warm blanket that keeps you broke. And if you're not careful, you'll build your entire life around avoiding discomfort, never realizing that you're avoiding growth at the same time. Weak people, and I say this with urgency, worship comfort like it's the gold. They live for the weekend. They crave ease. They want the path of least resistance. But I learned early on that wealth never shows up in a lazy man's lap. It doesn't knock on the door of the one who hit snooze 5 times and skipped the work because it didn't feel right. Wealth is attracted to discipline. It's attracted to the person who sacrifices soft living for strong earning, not because they hate rest, but because they love results. I remember waking up at 5 in the morning while others were still dreaming, not because I liked it, but because I had dreams that wouldn't wait. I remember skipping parties, saying no to nights out, turning off distractions. And let me be clear, it wasn't fun. It was necessary. The structure I built in those early years became the foundation of the freedom I now enjoy. Because once you've built capacity, once you've trained yourself to push through when it's uncomfortable, you earn the right to live life on your terms. See, the wealthy don't run from the hard stuff. They schedule it. They wake up and say, let me do what others won't so I can live how others can't. That's the formula. It's not about glamour or gimmicks. It's grind, it's grit, and it's the decision to do it anyway, especially when your feelings beg you not to. Now, there's a lie going around that says success should feel good all the time, that if it's right, it'll be easy. But that's nonsense. Building wealth is uncomfortable. It requires facing your laziness, confronting your distractions, showing up even when you're tired, discouraged, or tempted to quit. But here's the payoff. On the other side of discomfort is strength, and strength is the currency of builders. Every skip shortcut builds character. Every tough decision sharpens your resolve. Every moment you delay comfort, you increase capacity. And the bigger your capacity, the bigger your rewards. Comfort may give you temporary peace, but discipline gives you permanent power. It's the difference between living a soft life that fades or building a strong one that lasts. You got to ask yourself, do you want the pleasure of comfort now or the legacy of freedom later? Because you can't have both. One will cost you the other. So if you're serious about wealth, stop chasing comfort and start chasing capacity. Because when you build capacity, wealth becomes inevitable. Time. Now that's the most democratic resource on earth. Everyone, whether broke or wealthy, gets the same 24 hours in a day. But what separates those who rise from those who remain stuck isn't how much time they have, it's what they do with it. Weak people treat time like it's renewable. They act as if tomorrow is guaranteed. So they waste today in trivial pursuits, scrolling endlessly, binging distractions, waiting for motivation, and wishing for something to change. Now, let me tell you, wishing is a poor strategy. You don't wish for wealth, you work for it. And that work lives inside your minutes. Now, the wealthy think about time differently. They weaponize it. They treat each hour like it's a soldier assigned to a specific task in the war for their future. They don't drift through the day, they structure it. They don't hope things happen, they plan them. I once heard it said that either you run the day or the day runs you. And let me add, if the day is running you, it's probably running you broke. When I was first getting started, I didn't have a big business, a big bank account, or a big audience, but I had a notebook and a clock. I started planning my day the night before. I started asking myself, what's one thing I can do tomorrow to move closer to my goals? And you know what happened? My days stopped controlling me. I started controlling them. Money follows management. If you can't manage your time, you'll never manage wealth. Time is the proving ground. It reveals your discipline, your focus, your priorities. Broke people say, I don't have time. But the truth is they haven't made time. They haven't declared war on distraction. They haven't traded entertainment for education, leisure for legacy, or comfort for commitment. The strongest builders of wealth treat every minute like it matters, because it does. Every hour wasted in distraction is an hour stolen from your dream. Every day unplanned is a day that slips through your fingers like sand. You can't get it back. You don't get do-overs in time. And if you don't value your time, don't be surprised when no one else does. Here's a practical truth. Structure creates freedom. A calendar is not a cage, it's a weapon. When you use it right, you begin to bend time in your favor. You find out that 30 minutes of focused effort is more valuable than 3 hours of wandering. You learn how to compress decades into days by being intentional with your schedule. Wealthy minds live with urgency. They don't wait for the right time to act. They make the time. They know that every moment is a choice, either plant seeds or waste soil. And eventually, you harvest what you've planted or what you've neglected. So, if you want to stop being broke, stop wasting time. Budget your hours like you budget your money. Guard your mornings. Protect your focus. And remember, how you manage your minutes will decide the momentum of your life. When people think about building wealth, they often focus on strategies, systems, and skills, and that's important. But what most overlook, what often destroys more potential than failure ever could, is environment. You see, the people around you are not neutral. They are either pushing you forward or pulling you back. And if you surround yourself with weakness, people who complain, procrastinate, rationalize, and settle, you will inherit their mindset like a cold passed around a crowded room. Sit at the table of doubt long enough, and you'll start calling average a virtue. Now, early on in my journey, I didn't have much. I wasn't wealthy. I wasn't influential, but I realized something powerful. I had control over who I listened to, and I started to notice patterns. When I spent time around people who made excuses, I made more of my own. When I hung around people who blamed, I blamed more too. But when I got around those who expected more, demanded more, lived more, I changed. Not because they told me to, but because their example challenged me. The weak mindset feeds on comfort, and weak people provide comfort. They say, take it easy when you need to take it seriously. But they say it's okay to quit when you need to push through. They mean well, but that doesn't make them helpful. In fact, it's the subtle voices of acceptance around your average that are most dangerous to your potential. You don't grow in a greenhouse of comfort, you grow in a forge of pressure. You need people who hold the standard even when you want to drop it. I remember a man in my early years who never let me slack, and I'd show up tired and he'd say, you don't need rest, you need a reason. At the time, I hated hearing it, but I look back now and thank God for those voices that didn't pamper my weakness, but provoke my greatness. That's the kind of circle that elevates you. Not the one that lets you stay soft, but the one that challenges you to get sharp. You don't need 100 people in your corner. You need 3 who are climbing. You need voices that echo your vision louder than your doubt. And sometimes that means walking away from old friends who want to stay behind. Not because you're better than them, but because you're committed to becoming better than you were. Loyalty to your old life can't be stronger than your commitment to your new one. Iron sharpens iron. But if you surround yourself with paper, you'll tear under pressure. You need to sit at tables where the conversation is about building, not blaming, where habits are about discipline, not distraction, where time is honored, not wasted. That's where your mindset is molded into strength. Your environment is your ecosystem, and ecosystems determine what grows. Plant yourself in a garden of strength, and discipline will flourish. Plant yourself in a swamp of weakness, and mediocrity will multiply. Choose wisely. Because your circle is shaping your ceiling. Most people think wealth is about how much you make. But I'll tell you the truth, wealth is not about income, it's about habits. You can hand a broke mindset $1 million and it will vanish in a year. But you give a wealth-conscious mind a small income and it will multiply over time. That's the difference. Broke is not just a circumstance, it's a habit. And wealth, that's a habit too. If you want to be wealthy, don't just chase money. master the discipline behind it. Financial discipline starts small. It starts with saying no when it would feel better to say yes. It starts with skipping the impulse buy today so you can invest in opportunity tomorrow. When I was younger, I didn't have the income I have now, but I practiced the discipline as if I did. I saved a little, tracked what I spent, wrote down my goals, reviewed them weekly. That wasn't about money, it was about mindset. That habit trained my wallet to follow my values. Weak people spend emotionally. They feel bored, they shop. They feel tired, they splurge. They feel behind, they borrow. And they do it over and over until the habit becomes identity. I'm just not good with money. No, you just haven't trained your discipline yet. And until you do, it doesn't matter how much more you earn, you'll just increase the size of your spending, not the size of your savings. Discipline is doing what is wise, not what feels good. When it comes to money, wisdom is simple. Spend less than you earn, invest the difference, and let time do the heavy lifting. The problem is not complexity, it's consistency. Too many people chase hacks and tips and quick flips instead of committing to the boring, predictable, powerful habits that build wealth over time. It's not glamorous to skip the new phone. It's not exciting to cook at home. But those little decisions are the bricks that build a wealthy life. I've seen people with average income retire with freedom and dignity. I've seen people with big paychecks live in quiet panic. Here's the truth. Money will not manage itself. If you don't command it, it will leave you. Budgeting isn't punishment. It's permission. Permission to build, to grow, to be intentional. It's your declaration that you are in charge, not your desires. And let me say this. Giving is part of discipline too. If you can't give away $1 when you have 10, you won't give away 1,000 when you have 10,000. Giving trains your spirit to rise above greed. And it reminds you that wealth isn't just about getting, it's about growing. It's about becoming someone who handles resources with wisdom, integrity, and purpose. So what do? You start. You track every dollar. You save before you spend. You give before you indulge. You build habits today that wealth can rely on tomorrow. You don't need more money to be disciplined. You need more discipline to handle your money. Because ultimately, your wallet doesn't lie. It's a mirror of your mindset. And if you want to change your bank account, change the story you're telling yourself about money. Start acting like someone who builds wealth, and wealth will start showing up in your lives. People often ask, how do I find success? But let me tell you something that most never realize. You don't find success. You build it. You don't stumble into wealth or transformation or greatness like a lucky traveler finding gold in the dirt. No, you become the kind of person success is drawn to. And how do you do that? Through daily discipline. Through the slow, steady, sometimes silent process of self-reinvention. The truth is, you are not stuck with the version of yourself you've been, that timid version that hesitates, that complains, that waits for a break or a signal or a savior. That version is optional. But here's the catch. It doesn't disappear with time. It disappears with intention. You've got to kill it, not with judgment or shame, but with action, with commitments. Every morning you wake up and make the bed, you're not just organizing sheets, you're organizing your identity. Every time you hit the gym when you're tired, you're lifting more than weight. You're lifting your standard. Every book you read, every dollar you save, every decision you delay for the sake of long-term value, you are chiseling away at weakness and sculpting the kind of person who attracts wealth and opportunity. Years ago, I had to come to terms with the man I had become. I was full of potential, but bankrupt in execution. And I made a decision, not a dramatic, emotional one, but a clear, quiet one. I decided to become a builder of habits, of mindsets, of systems that would support who I wanted to be. That decision didn't pay off in a week. It paid off in a lifestyle, a new trajectory, And over time, that's what created my success. Not one moment, but thousands of disciplined ones. See, transformation isn't one giant leap. It's 1,000 quiet steps in the right direction. It's the morning routines you commit to even when no one is watching. It's the conversations you no longer entertain, the environments you refuse to return to. Reinvention means letting go of what's familiar so you can become what's possible. That most people don't change because they want change without loss. You can't have both. To become someone new, you must release someone old. And here's what I've learned. The more you obey discipline, the quieter your weakness becomes. The voice that once shouted, "You can't," becomes a whisper, then an echo, then silence. And in that silence, you hear something far more powerful: clarity, confidence, purpose. You stop waiting for the world to change because you realize you are the change. You stop needing motivation because you've built momentum. You stop asking for opportunities because you become the kind of person that opportunities recognize. So the next time you feel stuck, remember, you are not waiting on transformation. Transformation is waiting on you. Discipline is the doorway, and your new identity is just on the other side. Walk through it daily, quietly, relentlessly, and don't look back. Because wealth doesn't come to the lucky, it comes to the disciplined. As we wrap up today, let me leave you with this final thought. Success isn't a gift, it's a result. It's the sum total of every decision you make, every discipline you practice, and every sacrifice you embrace. There you go. If you're waiting for a miracle to transform your life, you're waiting for something that will never come. But if you commit to daily action, to the hard choices, and to the small habits that build wealth and strength over time, then you're already creating the miracle. Remember, the key to breaking through is not to wait for motivation to strike or for your circumstances to change. You change, and the circumstances will follow. Start building today. Start killing the weak mindset, the excuses, the distractions. Become someone who attracts wealth, success, and opportunity through the power of discipline and consistency. The future you desire is waiting for the version of you who is willing to put in the work. Become that version. The rest will follow. Every great success story started with one decision. Today, you have the chance to make yours. Choose discipline, choose growth, choose transformation. Let's get started.